Hello, everyone. This is Anton Madden with Peak Financing, and welcome to Peak Market Watch. Today, we have a special guest with us, Mark Ross from CSSI. CSSI is a cost segregation company active nationwide. And I would say it's probably best for Mark to introduce himself in a little bit more detail. Hello, Mark.
Sure. Hello. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to be with you today. As you indicated, I'm with the CSSI. We're the largest provider of cost segregation studies. I'm Chicago area based, but I work on properties and projects nationwide. We have boots on the ground nationwide to be able to do the physical site visits for every single one of our cost segregation studies. Um, if you're not familiar with cost segregation, what it basically is based on IRS guidelines, we will do a study, an analysis, which will identify what are the pieces and parts within the property that can be depreciated faster. And when you think about it, that's a non-cash expense, which on you're looking at your P&L statement, that is a depreciation expense, which will net against your income and thereby reduce or eliminate your federal tax liability. And if the study happens to create more of a loss, quote unquote loss, it's a paper loss, that can be carried forward indefinitely into future years as well.
Yeah. Excellent. A lot of our listeners, they are syndicators or property owners, right? So I'm sure they have experienced cost segregation or at least have heard of it. Now, I think what is really important to understand is what distinction can be made between a CPA who may be also offering cost segregation and a firm like yours who is strictly focused on cost segregation.
Yes, we get a lot of referrals from CPAs because what they do is they utilize our studies for their clients' tax returns. So we're not in competition with them. We work hand in glove with them to be able to provide them with the studies that their clients can utilize for their tax returns.
Yeah, very good. So, can you tell us a little bit about each segment that you're covering and what are some of the important aspects that one would have to consider?
Sure. First of all, this really works well for all property types. Um, I personally have done a lot of hotels, multifamily, retail, industrial, self-storage, mobile home parks. I mean, you name it, works for really every property type. So in essence, it's the same sort of procedure as far as taking a look at what the purchase price is, subtracting the land because you can't depreciate the land, and then doing a study on that. What a CPA will typically do is just go ahead and do a straight line depreciation. For most property types, it's straight line over 39 years. However, for residential properties, it's over 27 and a half years. So they'll take a look at the purchase price, subtract the land from it, and then do a straight line over many years. However, the other thing which is available through the IRS guidelines is cost segregation, and that's what we do. We will do a study, which will, like I indicated, which will have a site visit. We'll take a look at the offering memorandum, any appraisals, blueprints, other information that's available. And our engineers will spend weeks going through that data and identifying everything that can be depreciated for the client. It not just works for the acquisition, but let's say they're doing a CapEx, major CapEx, where maybe they're taking a multifamily, converting it from Class C to a Class B. We can do a separate analysis by taking a look at the CapEx on that. And so that's just an additional savings that we can provide.
Very good. Uh, so when we look at your firm compared to so many other firms that are out there, I think it's important to really get a clear understanding what what each firm can offer and what the expertise is. So what would you say, where lies your expertise compared to some of the other firms that are offering that service too? But we certainly have had our share of experiences where someone claimed that they are really experts in cost segregation, but once the study was started, then everyone realized that there were some quite a bit of issues with how they uh, approached the whole project.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I get asked that frequently. I'd say one of the main differentiations that we do is that we will only 100% of the time do a physical site visit for each one. We know that being able to do that, having our own people on site to be able to take pictures and photographs, we can not only maximize the amount of depreciation and tax savings, but we're also better able to defend that study in the event of an IRS audit. I have some clients that have come to me and said, well, I got a little cheaper price here. I said, well, is it a virtual one? And they said, well, yeah, it is. I said, well, that's just not what we do. I explained to them what we do. We want to maximize it. But also that key factor as far as being able to defend in the event of an IRS audit. As I indicated, we're the largest cost segregation firm, having done many tens of thousands of studies over the last 20 some years, and none of our studies have ever triggered an IRS audit. We've had some clients that have been audited for other reasons, and in a case like that, what we do is we provide the information and we never hear back. I'll give you an example of one I had here recently, where I did several years ago. I did a large multifamily property in Chicago, and they contacted me and they said, we're being audited by the IRS, not because of the cost seg, but because of some other things. But they have some questions about the study. And they gave me a laundry list of what the IRS was looking for. I sent it to our office. In less than 24 hours, we had that information. I sent it back, never heard back. So what we do is we have all that information, and we'll be able to archive that and respond at whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 10, 20 years from now. We're going to have that information to be able to defend the study, and we've never had a study overturned. So that's one of the key differentiations, I would say. But then also because of all of our experience, I think we're able to get the maximum amount of depreciation and tax savings available.
Yeah, that's it's amazing, right? When you think that you may save a few dollars, but you take the risk of being audited. Now, obviously, that uh, involves additional cost. So the question is, what is the typical project size where it actually makes sense to engage you, right? Obviously, there are these virtual services, and that's only is very suitable for single family homes and maybe very small properties. But as soon as it's a reasonably sized property, it just doesn't make sense. So, what would you say? What is the right project size where it's worthwhile to get you involved?
It's a pretty low threshold, and we basically have boots on the ground with our third party inspectors to do every property nationwide at a reasonable cost. So the low threshold is really $300,000 or greater, excluding the land value. We can make the numbers work on something like that. I mean, obviously, most of my projects are in the millions of dollars, but I have one client here in Chicagoland area. He buys single family duplexes and things like that every year. He comes to me and we do a low cost study on that. It may only cost, $2,000 to $3,000, but it'll save 30, 40,000, and he's happy. But one of my other ones I did this past year, we saved him over $1 million. So it's all variable depending upon the size of the property.
Excellent. Camille, do you have any questions?
Sure. My question to you would be, is there any reason when there is an operator for not to do a cost segregation?
Yes, in fact, we have this questionnaire that we ask our clients to fill out, which will give information not just about the property, but also about what their plans are. One of the pre-qualifying questions that we ask is, what's your hold period going to be? Are you planning on selling this property within, 3 to 5 years? And the reason why we ask that question is because there's something called a recapture tax. And we want to make sure that you hold on to that property for at least 3 to 5 years or longer, so that the return on investment you're going to get on the savings is going to far outweigh whatever the recapture tax is. So we don't recommend you do it if it's going to be a flip. That would be the primary reason why it may not be beneficial to do that. Um, one point to continue on with that is that for a lot of my clients, what they're doing, their investments in real estate, because they're looking for generational wealth. And the exit strategy for a number of them is that they pass away, because when you pass away, there's no step up in basis and you don't have any of that recapture tax. So that works in conjunction with that.
Thank you.
And then I'll mention too, there's something with the 1031 exchange. We routinely do studies with 1031 exchanges. However, the devil's in the details as far as what it is. We need to take a look at the 1031 property that was sold in order to acquire the newly acquired property, and sometimes the numbers on that will make the return on investment maybe not worthwhile. So when we have a 1031 exchange, we do a deeper dive into it, finding out that information. And because our objective is not to sell a study if it doesn't make sense. We want to make sure that the numbers are correct and that's it's going to be beneficial for the client.
So could you explain why that 1031 would impact that?
It has to do with how much has been depreciated on it really gets very, very detailed as far as how much they paid for it, how much they sold it for, what are all the details in regards to that, how much was depreciated, because sometimes there's just not enough meat on the bones based on the particular situation that makes it worthwhile. So there's so many different variables. That's why we gather the information on that property to see whether or not it makes sense or not. For the vast majority of them, it does, but I've had one last year where it was about they acquired about 20 different dollar stores, and we went through and did the numbers on it, and honestly, I don't remember the exact reasons at this point, but it just didn't make economic sense to do it. But we want our clients to be advised up front as far as what's going to be beneficial. In fact, when we do our preliminary analysis, we'll provide a conservative and a high-end estimate of what we anticipate the depreciation and tax savings to be. In almost 100% of the time, the actual study will come out within that range.
Excellent. So when we look at the various asset classes, how would you rank them where you see the largest opportunity for cost segregation? Obviously, a lot of our listeners, they are in multifamily, but many are also in other asset classes. I don't think that cost segregation should ever be the driver why someone would buy a property or not, but it still would be interesting to understand which asset classes have the highest opportunity for cost segregation deductions.
Yeah. I like your comments on that, because I've said the same thing to some clients. Some of them have asked me, well, what's the best thing I should get into where I get the maximum amount of tax benefits? And I'll say, well, even though that's what we do, I think you're looking at it not the way I would look at it. What's the best deal? What's the return on investment you're going to get? And a cost segregation is not going to make a bad decision good. It'll make a good decision better. So it shouldn't be the overriding factor. So I concur with everything you said on that. As far as different property types, what's interesting is one thing I mentioned is that land can't be depreciated. However, what is one property type that works well, and that's a golf course. Why would that be? You have all that land. Well, you're going to have a clubhouse, you're going to have a parking lot, you're going to have a lot of other infrastructure, things of that nature. Another one that's really high is mobile home parks. Unbelievable. And another thing, I do a lot of like retail triple net leases, and the majority of them, when our clients are buying that, they're not only buying the land, but the property as well. However, I have some where it's on a land lease. I'll give you an example of one which I did in Florida, where it was a Walgreens, where they were actually just buying the building. They weren't buying the land. Well, what's one thing I mentioned earlier? You take a look at the purchase price, you subtract the land. Well, what if it's a land lease? In that particular case, we don't have to subtract any land because they don't own any of the land. And another situation like that with Airbnb in Kauai, Hawaii, where it was based on the condo association, they didn't technically own any of the land. So in that particular case, we could also do it off of the full purchase price. So it really varies. Like I said, it works for all property types, and that's why we provide that free analysis. And we ask the information about, let's say it is multifamily, how many units is it going to be? And sometimes people ask me, well, how much is a $10 million multifamily? Well, the interesting thing about that is that could vary significantly. Is it like some I've done in Kansas where they're all 1 or 2 stories over a number of acres? Or maybe it's an inner city and it's all one building in one structure, where you're going to have a significant difference in what the depreciation is going to be for those, even though it's the same asset class, but just because of the configuration, especially in an inner city area, they may not have any parking involved. Parking lot's considered to be 15-year property. So it really varies a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, the more rehab you have in an existing building, the more opportunities you will get, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's called a PAD, a partial asset disposition, whereby we will go through and identify what it is that they're getting rid of the old property. It may not be fully depreciated, and our engineers review all that information in addition to, the new things that they're doing for that property. So we really try to do a deep dive on all that information to help our clients.
You mentioned parking to be 15, having a 15-year depreciation time. What are the most the biggest opportunities in terms of items like parking uh, to depreciate?
The majority of the ones that we do would be for a 5-year property, which would be a lot of your interior. It could be your lighting and your molding and maybe maybe the kitchen cabinetry and carpeting is a 5-year property. And one thing I should probably mention here too is that there's something called bonus depreciation. At the end of 2017, there's something called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And what that did was it indicated that anything which has a less than 20-year life, you could depreciate it 100% the first year of acquisition. Now, obviously, when you take a look at a property, that's only going to be a certain percentage of it because there's some part of a property that you can't depreciate at all, or the structural element is going to still be straight line depreciated over 27 and a half years if it's residential or 39 years for other property types. But what the bonus depreciation basically did was put cost segregation on steroids, so you could have a larger amount of depreciation. Now, the interesting thing about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act for bonus depreciation is that it had a sunset clause where it was 100% for a number of years, but then it went down to 80% and then 60% last year, 40% in 2025, and 20% and then zero. Now, there's a full expectation that with the new administration, they're trying to push through a bill which would make the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provision for bonus depreciation 100% again and make it permanent. So, well, as permanent as things are in DC, but we'll have to wait and see on what happens with that. Um, the thought is that it's probably going to be 100% retroactive January 20th, but wait and see. Don't hang your head on that yet. We'll have to see what happens with it.
Yeah. Uh, Obviously, we don't know yet. It's only, it sounds like we are moving in that direction. Do you see any other changes with the new administration that would impact depreciation and cost segregation?
No, I would say that's the primary one as far as the bonus depreciation and bringing that back.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's a massive benefit, right? Now, I think, uh, as you mentioned earlier, right, if you hold a property for a very short period of time, you have all the recapture. So that is always a little bit of a problem, right? Particularly for those uh, deal sponsors out there that are very aggressively advertising all the tax benefits
Hmm.
and do not want to talk about the recapture. That obviously, with all the, if you go back up to 100%, then there is a lot of pieces that potentially have to be captured, right?
Another thing I like to bring up too is something called a REP or real estate professional. Um, you can Google this, but you take a look at how does someone qualify as being a real estate professional? We have to have so many hours that you are materially participating in that property. And what's interesting with that is that if you're a real estate professional, um, the tax savings can not only go against the property, but against your spouse's W-2 income. I have a client every year. He comes back, he buys a bunch of properties. In the course of conversation, he's a high income neurosurgeon. He says, "Oh, by the way, my wife is a real estate professional." So in a case like that, the tax deductions not only go against the properties, but also against his high income as well.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I think for our listeners, this real estate professional term is being thrown around a lot, and different people have different uh, ideas what that actually means. So talk to your CPA and uh, get comfortable with that definition, and make sure that you're actually a true real estate professional, right? So I think there are some guidances out there that are kind of pretending that it's very easy to become a real estate professional, when in reality it's not that easy. Right?
Correct. The key thing there is document, document, document. Document all the hours that you're working, the login time, the log out time, all the hours, all the expenses, everything that you do. Because if you ever get audited by the IRS, they're going to be looking for that. A red flag for them is, let's say someone has a W-2 income and they also claim to be a real estate professional. Not saying it's impossible, but it's pretty unlikely that that's going to be the situation. So again, document everything.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, so why don't we talk? We've before we started, when we just had a casual discussion. You mentioned a new item that is very specific to your company, which I think is really groundbreaking, but in for a lot of reasons. Uh, so it's a tape, and why don't you explain that in your own words?
Sure, be happy to. This is a roll of it. This is drywall tape, sheetrock tape. It's not something which is commercially available. It's something that's available through us through a licensing deal. And what it does is it makes interior non-load bearing walls depreciable. Typically, what a CPA is going to have to do is to straight line depreciate that over 27 and a half or 39 years. However, by utilizing this tape based on IRS guidelines, and this is the only tape that's been IRS approved with the IRS ruling on it and everything, what it'll do is reclassify those walls as being removable. And what that means is that it, instead of having to do a straight line depreciation over many years, you can front end load a lot of those depreciation costs. Now that involves not just the walls itself, but the plumbing, the electrical, the molding, all the things that are associated with that. So that's what it does. And the fact is that you don't ever have to actually remove the walls to be able to make it worthwhile. It's just because it reclassifies that. So what does that mean dollar wise? It's approximately $30 per square foot as far as the tax savings, and for a 5 to $10 million property is probably going to save about 10%. Now that's going to vary depending upon the property, because you might have a medical facility where they have a lot more interior non-load bearing walls, as maybe like a traditional office or things of that nature. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at the blueprints, the drawings of the property, the construction budget, and based on that, our engineers will review the data and come up with an estimate of what the tax savings would be. From an environmental standpoint, it's also good because the drywall doesn't go into a landfill, because you can take it off intact and then you can fix the problem behind the wall, put it right back up. Or we've had some situations in Texas where there's a large office building, and what they did was they basically regutted a lot of it, and they took down a lot of the drywall, and then they put up a lot of other walls. And as a result of that, they were able to reuse that. So a lot of the drywall is not going into the landfill. So not just the extra LEED credits, with some of our clients going from a gold to a platinum LEED certification by utilizing this, more environmentally friendly, tax savings. So overall, it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say is the typical additional cost over a traditional drywall installation on a square footage basis?
There's no additional cost at all. In fact, we've had general contractors indicate that the ease of applying this tape with the is actually takes less time than what the norm would be. So there's no additional cost by utilizing this at all.
Okay. And you use the same type of screws and everything else. It's really just a tape that's different,
It's the
or
screws, correct. You don't want to nail it in, because then it's harder to take off. But when you screw it in, you put this tape on, and just because of the material that's used for this tape and the fact that we have the IRS ruling on it, that's what makes it beneficial.
yeah, that's great to know. I think you also mentioned when we had that discussion another big benefit, particularly for medical offices. Why don't you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. Yeah, for a lot of medical facilities, our experience is that frequently they may think that they want their walls to remain the way they are, but after they get in there, they realize they need move some of the walls around, or maybe they don't even move them. Maybe they just need to go back and access electrical or plumbing issue behind the wall. Traditionally, what you'd have to do is put up a lot of plastic barriers around that to contain all the dust and from the construction debris from taking down the drywall. However, with this process, you have none of that, because what you do is just pull the tape up, you unscrew it, and you put it back up when you're done. So, especially medical facilities, when health is very important in that regard, that's why they really like it a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Camille, do you have any comments or a
No,
question?
no, no, not at this time, but definitely great, great to know, great to hear.
Yeah. So, do you have anything else that you would like to mention about CSSI and how you set yourself apart from the rest?
Well, not just the cost segregation, the green zip tape, like I mentioned. I also referenced the R&D, the research and development tax credits, and also the Section 179, which has to do with energy tax credits. That's something that we do all that in-house. We don't farm that out. So we're able to take a look at a client's situation and in many times not just provide them with one service, but multiple services that will help them reduce their taxes.
Very good. So when it comes to new developments, you work closely together and also with the environmental the certification uh, studies, or do you do that yourself, like the lead studies?
We don't do that ourselves. We find out information about what because the lead standards are changed from year to year as far as the credits, and sometimes it varies depending upon even parts of the country. But we do work a lot with the IAI, the architectural community, and in fact, we actually do some webinars for them as well as far as certificates uh, for architects. Because as you can imagine, our services, a lot of them are especially interested in the lead credits and also in saving their clients money. So we work hand in glove with them in addition to the CPA community and builders, general contractors. As far as referral sources, I get them from CPAs, from lenders, from commercial property brokers, from wealth managers, you name it, all the people that have clients that own investment property.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mark. That was very insightful. How can our listeners reach you?
Well, they can reach me on LinkedIn, Mark Gross at CSSI. Also, my email is mark.gross at cssiservices.com. And I'd be happy to help out and provide anybody with a free preliminary analysis for any property or property type nationwide.
That's great to hear. Thank you very much, Mark, for coming on, and really appreciated all your insight.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. Pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.